Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan is an 8-bit action-adventure platformer that draws a lot of its inspiration from retro titles of these genres. Overall, it does a good job of being a fun and engaging game throughout its 8 to 9 hour runtime. But it does suffer from some odd balancing and design choices that I felt detracted from the amount of fun I was able to have while playing. But before we get started with the full review, if you enjoy indie games, please consider clicking that subscribe button as I cover a lot of different games on my channel. Thanks for watching this review. Now let's get to it. In Curse of the Mayan, Sydney Hunter will find himself trapped within a Mayan pyramid. You'll learn that the Hob calendar has been broken into 7 pieces, and it's your job to retrieve them to return peace to the Mayan civilization. The story told here does a good enough job at keeping you interested throughout with some charming and funny moments. As I don't have much to say about it other than that, let's move on. From a presentation perspective, there's some really nice pixel art to delight your eyeballs as you play through the game. And if you prefer an even more retro look than just the 8-bit visuals, there is an option to turn on scan lines if you want to mimic the old CRT look. There are some really nice effects, particularly with the lightning that strikes in the background during some levels, and also the fire, which you'll be seeing a lot of. These effects come at a cost to performance though, as there were at least a handful of times where I had some noticeable slowdown on some very busy screens. This made it difficult to hit my jumps, and since one false move could end in your demise, that was a bit frustrating. Frustrating is going to be a theme here, as there were quite a few times I felt frustrated while playing through Curse of the Mayan. The core gameplay is easy to explain as you'll platform your way through many different levels while collecting gems to purchase items in the shop. There are many upgrades and relics to acquire, and also the Crystal Skull collectibles, which are the main attraction since they affect progression. All the levels are interconnected to a main hub area, with certain doors requiring a certain amount of Crystal Skulls in order to unlock them. This is very similar to what you've seen in past games like Mario 64, where you would need a certain number of stars in order to progress. In Curse of the Mayan, they're easier to acquire as they are typically in plain sight or hidden behind breakable walls, but the amount the game requires seemed like a bit much. To unlock the next set of doors to progress, I had to backtrack to previously cleared levels throughout my playthrough. I was very aware I needed a certain amount of Crystal Skulls and was thorough with my exploration, but the game is set up in a way where backtracking will be a necessity at least a few different times. This felt like a major downside as it hurt the overall pacing and flow of the game, but it's handled in a way so that you can make quick work of the task. Your newly acquired skulls will be saved upon reaching a save statue within a level, so you can quit out at that point if you reach your desired count needed. There's a decent amount of variety to the level design, as you'll often see places you cannot get to on your first playthrough of a level, which hints to the aforementioned backtracking that will be required. There are also some underwater sections, which you will be limited to using your throw spear to attack enemies. Each level felt pretty unique, with some at times sprawling designs that made you search high and low to uncover its secrets. More than a few times, these sprawling levels resulted in some frustration, as the save statues were a bit too scarce, and one missed jump resulting in death meant a significant loss of progress. Dying in Curse of the Mayan returned you to your last used save point, with all progress lost up to that point. I couldn't help but feel like on the bigger levels that 1 or 2 more save points would have went a long way here. I'm fine with lost progress upon death, but replaying large chunks to return to where you failed often feels too punishing. Combat starts off simple enough, with Sydney having a whip at his disposal, but soon enough, you'll also earn yourself a throwable spear, and a boomerang. Switching between your 3 weapons is simple, and as a result gave the combat a great feel to it. Each weapon has its advantages and disadvantages, which you'll need to learn and use them to the best of your ability in order to overcome the many enemies and bosses you'll encounter. There are some really fun boss fights requiring some pattern recognition, which is a staple in gaming in general, but definitely 8-bit style games such as this. Where the boss fights can feel a bit overwhelming and frustrating are when certain bosses have a one-hit kill attack. I didn't enjoy when I'd get hit with these, as they resulted in having to start over from one mistake. Having no room for error felt overly punishing and frustrating. The last thing I'll say about the boss fights, and I'm not going to go into much detail or show it here because I don't want to spoil endgame content in my reviews, is that the last level and everything that takes place there to reach the conclusion felt like a bit too much, and I didn't enjoy what I had to overcome in that final stage in order to beat the game. Sydney Hunter will have plenty of upgrades to acquire to reach that finale, either by finding them hidden within stages or purchasing upgrades with your hard-earned gems in the various shops throughout the game. By the time you reach the end, you'll have a large inventory of relics and items. You can find and purchase elixirs if you need to refill your health, and you'll have bombs to destroy certain blocks you wouldn't be able to get rid of otherwise. Throughout the game, there's a constant feeling of growth as you're always earning new things to improve your capabilities, and I found this aspect of Curse of the Mayan to be enjoyable. The way the inventory progression is handled flowed very nicely throughout and was a stark contrast to the forced backtracking to retrieve more skulls in order to unlock new levels. The reason I mention this is because they go a bit hand in hand, as your ability to clear obsidian blocks is a pivotal one towards your progression and earning more skulls in previously cleared levels once you unlock it. Near the end of the game, there's a part where you play one of the previous Sydney Hunter games via an arcade machine in order to unlock the final key to the final door. This took me a few tries to earn the key, since touching anything in this game just results in death. I was able to reach the end of round 2 on my 3rd try, but this inclusion, as much as it was a cool idea, it wasn't enjoyable to play this even more retro Sydney Hunter title and have progression tied to it. It would have been a better inclusion as an Easter egg, in my opinion. This is another example of something that felt like it hurt the pacing and the flow. Sure, some diehard Sydney Hunter fans probably love this, but anybody playing this game as their first experience to the franchise like myself most likely will not. Now, let's briefly talk about some of the bugs and other out-of-the-ordinary issues I encountered. There are times where you'll see some noticeable horizontal line artifacts on the screen as you play that were distracting for sure. Also, as previously mentioned, I did encounter a few bouts of slowdown, which made landing precise jumps more difficult. Saving at a statue mid-level and quitting out and returning to play later sometimes results in starting the level over, while other times you start at the last statue you saved at. So for this, I'm honestly not sure which way it's supposed to be. Pressing the back button in the inventory menu doesn't let you check your earned relics like it says it should. It also has a buggy and unobtainable achievement currently that 0% of Xbox players have unlocked, but on Steam it has a 76% unlocked ratio, so I'm almost positive, based on the Steam percentage, this should have unlocked with regular progression very early on. Lastly, and again, I'm not going to show this, but while fighting the final boss, I had my boomerang get stuck, and I wasn't able to attack for almost 10 seconds while I frantically tried everything I could to regain my ability to attack again. It's a lot of small bugs and issues, and definitely not anything major, but these little things, when put together, really weigh down the experience by the time you reach its finale. Overall, Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan is a fun game with some really well-designed levels that are enjoyable to explore, combat that feels surprisingly fun given how simple it is, and a constant feeling of progression with the way it handles upgrades. But it's bogged down by some design choices most people won't enjoy, because I certainly didn't. A series of small bugs that may or may not be exclusive to the Xbox port that I played for this review, and its overall reliance on feeling a bit too retro. It does bring some more accessible and modern elements to the fold, but it needed to tip the dial just a bit more in that direction in order to push this style of game places it hasn't already been 1,000 times before. I award this a solid 7.5 out of 10 rating, and will say play it if you're a fan of retro gaming, but maybe pass if you find yourself easily frustrated, as a lot of the challenge here felt a bit too close to the unfair side of the spectrum for modern audiences. I appreciate you watching this review, and I hope you found it helpful. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, comment below if you have any questions, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I hope to see you on my next video, but until then, have a good one.